The chamber was massive, floating in the darkness of space like a jewel. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated areas. The air hummed with translation devices working in real time. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat calmly in the human section, flanked by her two colleagues. They had been called to this emergency session without explanation. The speaker, a tall being with blue crystalline skin, rose from the central platform. His voice echoed through the chamber. "This council convenes to address a matter of galactic security," he began. "We have discovered a threat that must be contained before it destroys us all." Sarah leaned forward slightly. Beside her, Ambassador Park whispered, "What threat?" "We haven't detected anything," the speaker continued. "For 50 years, we have welcomed humanity into our peaceful community. We believed you could adapt to our ways. We were wrong." A holographic display appeared above the chamber. Numbers and charts filled the air. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she read them. "Humanity's population has grown by 30% since joining the council," the speaker said. "Your resource consumption exceeds all projections. Your military forces, though you call them defensive, are larger than any species at your development level should possess." A reptilian ambassador stood. The Zeral were one of the most powerful species in the council. His scales gleamed under the lights. "Humans are predators," he hissed. "Look at their eyes, front-facing, built for hunting. They evolved by killing, and that instinct remains. They smile to show their teeth. They shake hands to prove they hold no weapons. Every interaction is rooted in violence." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Sarah felt Park tense beside her, but she placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," her gesture said. "We have analyzed human history," another ambassador added. This one was insectoid, with multiple eyes that gleamed. Before they reached the stars, they fought constantly. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy their own planet. They only stopped because they met us. "We gave them peace," the Zeral ambassador continued. "We showed them a better way. But a predator is always a predator. They are simply waiting, growing stronger. One day they will turn on us." The speaker raised his hand. "A proposal has been made. Humanity must be classified as a Category 5 expansion risk. For the safety of all peaceful species, they must be contained." "Contained?" Sarah spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, almost curious. "What does that mean?" The speaker wouldn't meet her eyes. "Surrender of your homeworld and all colonies. Restriction of your population growth. Supervision by council peacekeepers. If you refuse—" He paused. "Military action will be taken." The chamber fell silent. Sarah could feel thousands of alien eyes on her. They expected panic, begging, perhaps anger. She smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile. It wasn't a diplomatic smile. It was something else entirely. Something that made several nearby ambassadors shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I see," Sarah said softly. "You wish to go to war with humanity." "We wish to prevent war," the speaker corrected, "by containing the threat you represent." "By invading our worlds and enslaving our people," Park said, his voice tight. "By preventing you from doing the same to us eventually." The Zeral ambassador shot back. "We know what you are, killers, warriors. You cannot hide it forever." Sarah stood slowly. Her colleagues stood with her. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. "Let me make sure I understand," she said. "You are declaring war on humanity, not because we have attacked anyone, not because we have broken any laws, but because you fear what we might do in the future. Preemptive action is necessary," the speaker said. "The vote will now commence." Lights appeared above each species section. Green for yes, red for no. One by one they began to glow. Green, green, green. Sarah watched them all. The Zeral voted green immediately. So did their allies. The smaller species followed, afraid to stand against the powerful. A few hesitated, but fear won over justice. Red lights appeared above the human section, and above two small species who had been helped by human aid programs in the past. 44 green, 3 red. "The motion passes," the speaker announced. "Humanity, you have 30 days to surrender your worlds peacefully. After that, council fleets will enforce compliance by any means necessary." Sarah nodded slowly. She tapped her wrist device, sending an encrypted message. Then she looked up at the speaker. "You're absolutely sure about this?" she asked. "You truly want to go to war with humanity?" "It is decided," the speaker said firmly. Sarah's smile widened. Park and the other human ambassador smiled too. It spread between them like they had just heard the punchline to a joke that only they understood. "Then humanity accepts your declaration of war," Sarah said clearly. "We will see you very soon." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her colleagues followed. The aliens watched them go, confused. Where was the fear? The desperate negotiations? The pleading? As the doors closed behind the humans, the Zeral ambassador spoke. "They don't understand yet. They will when our fleets arrive." But in the corridor, Sarah was already speaking into her communicator. "This is Ambassador Chen. Authorization code Chen Alpha 77, confirm." A voice responded immediately. "Confirmed, Ambassador. Protocol reversion is authorized," Sarah said quietly. "Send the message." "They don't know." "Understood. Message sent." "And Ambassador?" "It's about damn time." Sarah smiled again. That same unsettling smile. Yes, it is. Across human space, the message arrived. In military headquarters on Earth, in colony defense stations on Mars and Titan, in museums dedicated to humanity's martial past. Old men and women in uniform received the notification. Many were in their 80s or 90s, veterans of the last wars before first contact. They had spent 50 years teaching history, training in secret, keeping the skills alive. They read the message. Protocol reversion authorized. Containment war declared by Galactic Council. All restrictions lifted. In a museum on Earth, a retired general stood before a sealed door. Behind it lay weapons and technologies that had been forbidden by the Council. Not destroyed. Just hidden. He pressed his hand to the scanner. The door opened for the first time in decades. "Welcome back, old friend," he whispered to the darkness inside. On news channels across human worlds, the declaration appeared. Analysts expected panic. Emergency evacuations, riots. Instead, recruitment centers were flooded. Not with desperate conscripts. With volunteers. Millions of them. Street parties began in major cities. People danced and celebrated. The aliens monitoring human communications were baffled. "Why are they celebrating?" a Zeral intelligence officer asked. "We just declared war on them." His superior didn't answer. He was watching footage from Earth, watching humans smile. That same smile. And for the first time he felt something he hadn't felt in his long life. Fear. The first week after the declaration confused everyone in the Galactic Council. Their intelligence reports made no sense. Human colonies weren't evacuating. Instead, civilian transports were arriving. Construction crews were building fortifications. Children were being sent to school as normal. On Earth, the stock markets actually went up. "They don't understand," the Zeral military commander said, reviewing the reports. "They think we're bluffing." But the humans did understand. They understood perfectly. On Mars, in a sealed government facility, historians were working around the clock. They pulled files from archives that hadn't been opened in decades. Documents marked "forbidden knowledge" and "restricted post-contact." Dr. James Morrison had studied human military history his entire life. Now he stood before the Council of Governors explaining what the aliens had awakened. "Before first contact, humanity was at war," he said. "Not one war. Continuous war spanning thousands of years. We got very, very good at it." He displayed images on the screen, battles from Earth's past. The numbers made the governors pale. The First World War, 20 million dead. The Second World War, 85 million dead. The resource wars of the 22nd century, 40 million dead. He paused. And those are just the major conflicts. When we met the aliens, they were peaceful, genuinely peaceful. They hadn't fought a real war in 300 years. We made a choice. We decided to try their way. A governor spoke up. "We suppressed our military development?" "No," Morrison corrected. "We hid it, restricted it, continued research in secret. We learned to build weapons the Council would never approve. We trained soldiers in tactics the Council would call barbaric. We prepared for the day someone challenged us. We hoped that day would never come," he added quietly. "But we knew better. Peace only lasts until someone decides to break it." Another governor leaned forward. "What are you saying, Doctor?" Morrison smiled. That smile. I'm saying the Council just declared war on a species that never forgot how to fight. They think we're soft because we chose peace. They're about to learn the difference between cannot and will not. Across human space, the transformation began. Merchant ships that hauled cargo between colonies began to change. Panels slid away to reveal hidden weapon ports. Cargo holds opened to show missile batteries. These weren't warships disguised as merchants. They were merchants designed to become warships when needed. The Q-ship doctrine, an old Earth naval tradition. The Council had forbidden military vessels in civilian space. So humanity had made every civilian vessel potentially military. In orbit of Titan, retired Admiral Catherine West watched her crew work. She was 78 years old. She had commanded destroyers during the last pre-contact war. For 50 years, she had taught history at the academy. Now she stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel, Peaceful Horizons, watching it transform into what it had always secretly been, a warship. "Weapons ready, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. He was 25 years old, trained in secret, hungry for the test. "Good," West said. "Let's see if the old ways still work." They didn't have to wait long. 12 Zeral cruisers entered human border space on day 15. They were advanced scouts, meant to test human defenses. They expected to find frightened cargo ships fleeing for safety. Instead, they found 3 human vessels waiting for them. The Zeral commander opened communications. "Attention human vessels. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Any resistance will be met with destruction." Admiral West's face appeared on his screen. She was smiling. "Negative," she said simply. "You're in human space. Leave now." The Zeral commander laughed. "You have 3 ships. We have 12. Stand down or die." "Understood," West said. "You have been warned." She cut the communication and turned to her crew. "Weapons free. Show them what we are." The battle lasted 4 minutes. The Zeral ships were beautiful. Elegant curves and gleaming metal. They had shields designed to deflect energy weapons. Their tactics were clean, by the book, refined over centuries of minor conflicts. The human ships were ugly, blocky, covered in sensors and weapons that looked crude. But when they fired, the universe changed. Kinetic kill missiles. Simple concept. Accelerate a dense metal projectile to a significant fraction of light speed. No fancy energy weapons, just mass and velocity. The Zeral shields, designed for lasers and plasma, might as well have been tissue paper. The missiles punched through them like they weren't there, straight through the ships themselves. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes followed. Another primitive, brutal weapon. The Zeral had banned such things centuries ago as barbaric. Humanity had improved them. Electronic warfare suites scrambled the Zeral communications. They couldn't coordinate, couldn't retreat together, couldn't even call for help clearly. Admiral West didn't monologue, didn't taunt. She just executed the attack with cold efficiency. 4 minutes after the battle began, 12 Zeral cruisers were debris. The 3 human ships had taken superficial damage, nothing serious. The Zeral commander survived long enough to send 1 transmission. His ship was venting atmosphere, dying around him. "What are you?" he gasped. West looked at the screen. "We're what you wanted," she said. "Warriors. You just forgot what that word really means." She cut the transmission and let his ship die. The footage reached the Galactic Council 3 hours later. They watched in silence as 3 human vessels destroyed 12 alien warships with contemptuous ease. "The technology isn't even advanced," a military analyst said, reviewing the data. "These are primitive weapons, kinetic projectiles, nuclear fission, things we banned centuries ago." "But effective," another added quietly. "How did they develop these in secret?" someone asked. An intelligence officer spoke up. "They didn't. They already had them, before first contact. They simply never stopped researching, never stopped training. While we were exploring peacefully, they were preparing for this." The speaker looked ill. "How many ships can they field?" The intelligence officer checked his data. We're not sure. They've always underreported their military capacity. What we thought was their entire defense fleet. That was probably one sector's patrol group. They've been hiding their strength for 50 years? No, the officer corrected. They've been restraining themselves for 50 years. There's a difference. In the council chamber, a junior diplomat from a species called the Threll spoke up. She was young, idealistic. Perhaps we made a mistake. Perhaps we should negotiate. The Zeral ambassador slammed his hand down. Never. This proves we were right. They are dangerous. We will mobilize our full fleet. We will crush them. But his voice shook slightly. For the first time in his life, he had seen humans not as peaceful neighbors, but as what they truly were. Apex predators who had chosen to be gentle, until someone gave them a reason not to be. On Earth, the celebration continued, but now the galaxy understood. Humans weren't celebrating because they were ignorant. They were celebrating because after 50 years of restraint, of holding back, of being peaceful when every instinct screamed for something else, they had finally been given permission to be themselves again. The videos being broadcast across human networks made it clear. Historical footage of human wars, the tactics, the weapons, the casualty counts that made alien conflicts look like minor disagreements, and always the same message. This is what we did to each other. Imagine what we'll do to you. The smile had been explained. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It was relief. Humanity had been holding its breath for 50 years. Now, it could finally exhale. 3 weeks into the war, the Galactic Council realized they had made a terrible mistake. But pride wouldn't let them admit it. The Zeral Dominion mobilized their full military, 200 warships, the pride of their civilization. They prepared to invade human space and end this quickly. They never got the chance. Human fleet groups struck first, but not where the Zeral expected. They didn't attack the military fleet. They attacked everything else. Supply depots disappeared in coordinated strikes. Communication relays went dark. Shipyards building new vessels found themselves targeted by precision attacks. Not destroyed, interestingly. Disabled. The humans wanted the Zeral to see what they had lost, not forget it existed. Admiral Marcus Chen commanded the operation from the carrier Indomitable. He was Sarah Chen's brother, and he had spent 50 years studying logistics warfare while pretending to teach civilian supply chain management. The enemy fleet is useless without support, he explained to his officers. Cut their fuel lines. Destroy their spare parts. Eliminate their repair facilities. Then wait. We're not engaging them directly, sir, a young officer asked. Why would we? Chen replied. Their fleet is trapped in their own space. They can't advance without supplies. They can't retreat without losing face. They're frozen. It was a lesson from old Earth wars, from the submarine campaigns that strangled island nations, from the blockades that starved armies. Humanity remembered. But the Zeral weren't the only threat. 44 species had voted for war. Humanity sent small task forces to each of their territories, not to invade, just to remind them that humans could reach them anytime they wanted. A single human destroyer would appear in orbit of a council member's homeworld. It would sit there for an hour, silent, not threatening, just present. Then it would jump away. The psychological effect was devastating. These species had thought themselves safe behind council protection. Now they realized a human ship could appear above their most important world whenever it wanted. Security meeting rooms across the galaxy, filled with panicked officials. How did they penetrate our defenses? They didn't penetrate them. They went around them, through routes we didn't think possible. We need to fortify every world. With what? Our military isn't designed for this. That was the problem. The Galactic Council's military had been built for peacekeeping, for ceremonial displays, for minor border disputes, not for real war. Humanity's military had been built for survival. On the human news networks, something else was happening. Educational broadcasts, history lessons, not propaganda, just facts. Footage from Earth's Second World War showed the Battle of Stalingrad, a city ground to rubble, millions dead, fought over 5 months in brutal conditions. The narrator's voice was calm. The Russian defenders lost more soldiers in this single battle than the Zeral Dominion has lost in all conflicts over the last 300 years combined. And the Russians won. Images from the Normandy invasion. The planning. The logistics. The execution. Thousands dying on beaches to establish a foothold. This operation involved coordinating over 150,000 soldiers, 7,000 ships, and complete deception of enemy intelligence. Done with 1940s technology, we can do much more now. The message was clear. Humanity's entire existence had been warfare. Learning it. Perfecting it. Surviving it. The aliens watching these broadcasts began to understand. They had declared war on a species whose entire cultural evolution had been shaped by conflict, who had written books about strategy that were thousands of years old, who had philosophers dedicated to understanding warfare. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Miyamoto Musashi, names that meant nothing to the aliens but everything to humans. In the council chamber, an emergency session convened. The smaller species were terrified. "We must negotiate," a delegate from the Prin Collective pleaded. "This war is madness. We cannot show weakness," the Ziral ambassador insisted. But his scales had lost their gleam. "We must continue. Victory is still possible." "With what?" another delegate demanded. "Our fleet can't move. Our infrastructure is in ruins, and they haven't even committed their full strength yet." That was true. Human intelligence suggested that Earth alone had another 500 warships in reserve. The colonies had more. Nobody knew the total number. "Then we bring in more allies," the Ziral ambassador said. "The Krill Hegemony. They have the second strongest military in the galaxy. With them, we can crush the humans." The speaker hesitated. "The Krill are aggressive. If we involve them, we are already at war." The Ziral interrupted. "What does it matter how aggressive our allies are?" The vote was called. 30 species voted to invite the Krill Hegemony into the war. 14 abstained. The Krill accepted immediately. They were a warrior culture themselves, though nothing compared to humanity. They had been looking for an excuse to test their strength. "We will show these humans what real warriors look like," the Krill war leader announced. "We will burn their colonies and break their spirit." 2 weeks later, the Krill made their first move. They didn't attack military targets. They attacked a civilian colony, Proxima Falls, population 180,000, mostly families, scientists, farmers. It had minimal defenses because it wasn't a military target. The Krill orbital bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it was done, the colony was gone. Every structure destroyed. No survivors. The transmission from the Krill war leader was broadcast across the galaxy. "This is the price of defying the Council. Surrender now or every human world will burn." For the first time since the war began, humanity went silent. No broadcasts. No messages. No activity on the networks. The Council thought they had finally broken human morale. The Krill celebrated their victory they didn't understand. The silence wasn't despair. It was something much more dangerous. In human military command, Admiral West reviewed the casualty reports from Proxima Falls. 180,000 dead. Children, elderly, civilians who had never held a weapon. She looked at her staff. "Change of engagement protocols. The Krill have escalated beyond military conflict." "We respond in kind, ma'am," an officer asked carefully. "Before first contact, we had a saying," West explained. "Don't start wars you can't finish." The Krill just started something they definitely can't finish. She pulled up a file marked Contingency Omega, plans that had been written decades ago. "Plans for total war. We're going to teach them what happens when you attack human civilians," she said quietly. "We're going to make them regret being born." The orders went out. Every human fleet group received the same directive. Target Krill military assets. No mercy, no quarter. Total destruction. But something else went out too. A public message broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Ambassador Sarah Chen's face appeared. She wasn't smiling anymore. "The Krill Hegemony has committed an atrocity," she said. "They murdered 180,000 civilians. They believe this will break us," she paused. When she continued, her voice was ice. "They're wrong. Humanity grieves for our dead. We will honor them. We will remember them. But we will not be broken." The Krill wanted to see what happens when humans get angry. They're about to find out. And to every species watching this, you voted for war. You don't get to complain about how we fight it. The transmission ended. Across human space, memorial services were held for the Proxima Falls victims. They were brief, efficient. Human emotion was channeled into cold determination, and in the darkness between stars, human fleets began to move toward Krill space. This time, there would be no restraint. Operation Reckoning began on day 63 of the war. The Krill Hegemony controlled 17 worlds across 4 systems. They had a military fleet of 400 ships and a population of 8 billion. The humans didn't attack them directly. Instead, human ships appeared at every jump point leading into Krill space. Every trade route, every supply line, every possible path in or out of their territory. The blockade was absolute. At first, the Krill laughed. "We don't need trade with aliens. We are self-sufficient. This blockade means nothing." But humanity knew better. No civilization spanning multiple star systems could be truly self-sufficient. Resources had to move between worlds: food, medicine, fuel, manufacturing components. Admiral Chen watched the projections. "How long until they start feeling it?" His logistics officer checked the data. 3 weeks for shortages, 6 weeks for serious problems, 3 months for collapse. "Then we wait," Chen said. "Let time do the work." But the Krill wouldn't wait quietly. They launched attack after attack against the blockade ships, wave after wave of fighters and cruisers trying to break through. Every attack failed. The human ships were positioned perfectly, overlapping fields of fire, rotating shifts to stay fresh. And every time the Krill committed ships to breaking the blockade, those ships didn't come back. Inside Krill space, panic began to spread. Supply ships weren't arriving. Manufacturing worlds ran out of raw materials. Agricultural worlds couldn't export food to industrial worlds. The whole system started breaking down. The Krill war leader sent a message to the human fleet. "Face us in honorable combat. Fight us ship to ship." Admiral Chen replied simply, "No, you wanted war. This is war. Not honor, not glory, just results." On day 75, the first Krill colony world requested humanitarian aid from the human blockade. They were starving. Their medical supplies were exhausted. The human commander on station authorized the aid shipment immediately. Food, medicine, even some manufacturing supplies, all freely given. The Krill military tried to intercept it, thinking it was a trick. It wasn't. It was exactly what it claimed to be: humanitarian aid for civilians. "Why?" the Krill planetary governor asked, confused. "We are your enemy," the human captain explained. "Your military attacked our civilians. We're fighting your military. Your civilians aren't our enemy. They're victims of their government's choices." The aid continued. More Krill worlds requested it. Soon the human blockade was providing more support to Krill civilians than their own government could. The war leader raged. "They're turning our people against us." He was right. On Krill worlds, civilians began to question why they were fighting. The humans weren't monsters. They were actually helping while their own military did nothing. In the council chamber, representatives watched this unfold with growing horror. Not horror at human cruelty. Horror at human precision. "They're not conquering the Krill," a delegate whispered. "They're dismantling them, separating the military from the civilian population, making the people see their leaders as the problem. It's psychological warfare," another added. "The Krill military becomes the enemy of their own people." A delegate from a species called the Krill stood. She was a military strategist, one of the council's best analysts. She had been watching the human campaign with professional interest. "I need to speak with the human commanders," she announced. "You want to defect?" someone asked, shocked. "I want to understand," she corrected. "I've studied warfare my entire life, what the humans are doing. It's beyond anything I've ever seen. I need to know how they think." 3 days later, she was aboard the human flagship, Indomitable, speaking with Admiral Chen. "Why don't you just destroy the Krill fleet?" she asked. "You have the firepower." Chen smiled slightly. "Because that's inefficient. If we destroy their fleet, we prove we're stronger. But we have to do it again with the next species who challenges us. If we dismantle their entire society without firing a shot, we prove we're smarter. That's a lesson that lasts." "You're not trying to win a battle," the Krill strategist said slowly. You're trying to win the concept of war itself. Now you're getting it, Chen said. We're teaching the galaxy what total war actually means. Not ships exploding, not dramatic battles, just cold, calculated victory, making the enemy defeat themselves. She was quiet for a moment. May I access your military history databases? Of course. For 3 days she studied human warfare, from ancient battles with swords and shields to modern space combat. She saw patterns the aliens had never understood. Finally, she asked for a meeting with the full human command staff. You never stood a chance, she told them. Not you, us, the council, we never had a chance. Explain, Admiral West said. Your species has been at war for thousands of years. Real war, total war, survival war. You developed theories of warfare, entire philosophies. You have words for concepts we never needed. Attrition, deterrence, asymmetric warfare, mutually assured destruction. She pulled up a comparison chart. The Council's last major war was 300 years ago. It lasted 6 weeks. Casualties, 30,000 across both sides. You would call that a skirmish. We thought we understood war, she continued. We had militaries, strategies, tactics, but it was all theoretical, academic. We were playing at war. You were practicing for survival. So you're saying we're just more violent? An officer asked. No, the Krill strategist said firmly. I'm saying you're more experienced. There's a difference. Violence without strategy is just destruction. You have violence plus 10,000 years of learning how to apply it effectively. She looked around the room. I'm defecting to humanity. Not because I agree with this war, but because someone needs to teach the Council what they're really facing, before more species get destroyed because they don't understand. Admiral West considered this. And you think you can convince them? I can show them the truth, she said. The humans aren't the danger. Our ignorance is the danger. We started a war we couldn't even comprehend, let alone win. The Council received her message 2 days later. Her analysis was detailed, professional, and terrifying. Human military. Doctrine operates on multiple levels simultaneously, she explained. While you're watching their fleets, they're destroying your logistics. While you're protecting your military, they're winning your civilians. While you're focused on individual battles, they're winning the entire war. Every tactic they use, they learned from fighting each other. They know how to fight enemies who think like them because they spent millennia doing exactly that. We think differently than they do, which makes us easier opponents, not harder. She paused. The Zeral fleet that's been frozen in place for weeks? The Krill hegemony that's collapsing without a major battle? This is them being gentle. This is restraint. If they wanted to, they could turn every council world into Proxima Falls. They have the weapons, the delivery systems, the doctrine. They've been preparing for total war since before they even reached space. They just chose not to use it, until we forced them to remember how. Her message concluded with a simple statement. Surrender now. Negotiate peace. Because if the humans decide to stop being gentle, we won't survive. The council chamber was silent after her transmission ended. Then slowly, representatives began to stand. First the smaller species, then some of the larger ones. Not all, but enough. We request negotiations, they announced. We wish to withdraw from this conflict. The Zeral ambassador tried to rally them. Cowards, we can still win. With what? Someone shot back. We can't even feed ourselves. Our fleets are scattered. Our people are terrified. We've lost, and you're too proud to admit it. By the end of the session, 17 species had officially withdrawn from the war. 14 more were considering it, but not the Krill, and not the Zeral. They still believed they could win. Admiral West received the news and sighed. Some lessons have to be taught the hard way. She looked at her fleet disposition. Bring the main battle group to Sanctum. Council headquarters. Let's show them we could end this anytime we want. 500 human warships jumped into orbit around the Council's homeworld 3 days later. They didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They just appeared. The most massive, human military presence ever assembled in one place, hanging in space above the galaxy's political center. The message was clear without words. We could end you right now. We're choosing not to. On Sanctum's surface, council leaders stared at their screens in horror. Those 500 ships represented extinction for their civilization if humanity decided to fire. But the transmission they received wasn't a threat. It was an offer. This can end today, Admiral West said calmly. Or it can end after we've destroyed everything you value. Your choice. The vote was called. Peace negotiations. Now. But first they had one question. What are your terms? 8 species refused to surrender. Led by the Krill and Ziral, they called themselves the True Council. They believed the other species were traitors. They believed humanity could still be defeated. They launched one final desperate attack. 2,000 ships. Every vessel they could gather. Their target, Earth itself. If they couldn't win, they would make humanity pay the ultimate price. They would destroy the human homeworld. The fleet jumped into Earth's solar system on day 112 of the war. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, and it walked into a trap. Earth's defense network activated immediately. Not just military ships, the entire system. Orbital platforms, moon bases, asteroid fortresses, satellites armed with weapons the Council had never seen, and the human fleet. Not 500 ships. Not 1,000. 3,000 warships had been positioned throughout the solar system, waiting. The battle began at the edge of the system and moved inward. The alien fleet tried to rush through to Earth, but human forces hit them from every direction. Admiral West commanded from Mars orbit. She watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Target their command ships first, she ordered. Break their coordination. Human missiles moving at incredible speeds punched through alien formations. Nuclear warheads detonated in carefully calculated patterns, destroying multiple ships with each blast. Kinetic kill weapons turned enemy cruisers into expanding clouds of debris. The aliens had expected to fight human warships. They weren't prepared for Earth's civilian population to fight too. Private spacecraft modified with weapons. Orbital factories that launched industrial equipment as improvised weapons. Even the lunar colonies fired mining explosives at enemy ships. Earth's 12 billion people had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. The alien fleet tried to break through. They lost 300 ships in the first hour, 500 more in the second. By the third hour, they were trying to retreat, but human ships had cut off their escape routes. The Krill war leader, commanding from his flagship, saw his fleet dying around him. He sent one final transmission. How? How are you this strong? General Marcus MacArthur IV, commanding the Earth Defense Forces, responded. His face was hard, unforgiving. You killed 180,000 of our civilians, he said simply. Did you think we would just forgive that? Did you think we wouldn't make you pay? You came to our home. You tried to destroy our world. This is what happens when you wake a sleeping dragon. The Krill war leader's ship exploded moments later. By the end of the day, the alien fleet was gone, destroyed. 2,000 ships reduced to wreckage. The survivors were captured, their crews held as prisoners. Human casualties, 7,000. All military. No civilians harmed. The galaxy watched the battle footage in stunned silence. The human defense hadn't just won. They had massacred an enemy force 3 times their size without breaking a sweat. But what happened next surprised everyone even more. Instead of a victory speech, humanity broadcast something different. General MacArthur stood before a wall of names. 180,000 names. The Proxima Falls victims. These people died because your leaders made bad decisions, he said. They were scientists, teachers, children, farmers, artists. They weren't soldiers. They were civilians who never wanted to fight. We won this battle. We won this war. But these people are still dead. Victory doesn't bring them back. He paused, letting that sink in. We're going to read every name. All 180,000. It will take 6 days. We want you to understand what war really costs. Not ships. Not territory, people. Real people with families and dreams and futures. For 6 days, human broadcast did nothing but read names. Across the galaxy, people watched. Aliens who had supported the war began to feel shame. These weren't numbers. They were individuals. When the final name was read, General MacArthur spoke again. War isn't glorious. It isn't heroic. It's tragedy with a winner. We won. But we still lost these people. Everyone who voted for this war is responsible for their deaths. Remember that. 3 days later, the remaining hostile species surrendered unconditionally. There were no terms, no negotiations, just complete surrender. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Every species was required to attend, including humans. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the chamber. The same chamber where war had been declared 4 months ago. But everything was different now. The alien representatives wouldn't meet her eyes. Shame hung heavy in the air. The speaker stood. He looked like he had aged decades. The council has voted to dissolve itself, he announced. We recognize that we were wrong, that we acted out of fear and ignorance, that we caused a war that killed millions for no reason. He looked directly at Sarah. Humanity, we ask for your forgiveness, and we ask for your leadership. Sarah stood. She didn't smile. Not anymore. Forgiveness isn't mine to give, she said. Ask the families of Proxima Falls. Ask the soldiers who died defending Earth. Ask the Krill civilians who starved because their leaders were too proud to surrender. But we will help you build something better. Not a council of species who pretend war doesn't exist. An assembly of species who understand that peace requires strength. Over the next weeks, the Treaty of Terra was negotiated aboard the human flagship Remembrance. The terms were surprisingly reasonable. Territory adjustments, yes. The humans took control of some strategic systems. Reparations were required, but minimal. Humanity didn't want to cripple the alien economies. The real changes were structural. A new organization, the Galactic Assembly, with a permanent security council. Humanity held 1 seat with veto power, but so did 5 other species chosen for their wisdom during the crisis. Mutual defense pacts. No preemptive wars. Disputes resolved through negotiation or, if necessary, through a joint peacekeeping force trained by human military advisors. Several alien species requested those advisors immediately. They wanted to learn. To understand how to defend themselves properly. Humanity agreed, but with a condition. We'll teach you how to fight, Admiral West told them. But we'll also teach you why fighting should be the last resort, not the first. On Earth, the memorial ceremonies continued. Every colony, every city, every military base held services for the fallen. The names were carved into monuments. The faces preserved in databases. The stories told to children, we won. Parents told their kids. But these people still died. Never forget what war costs. Years passed. The Galactic Assembly became stronger. Trade resumed. Cultural exchange flourished. Alien students studied at human universities, taking required courses on military history and the ethics of warfare. Human martial arts became popular across the galaxy. Not for fighting, but for discipline. For understanding the philosophy of strength and restraint. Human war literature was translated into hundreds of alien languages. Sun Tzu's Art of War became a bestseller. So did books about peace, about diplomacy, about choosing not to fight. The galaxy learned that humanity contained multitudes. They could be the most dangerous warriors in existence. They could also be the most compassionate healers, the most creative artists, the most dedicated teachers. The key was that they chose which to be, based on what the situation required. A decade after the war, Ambassador Sarah Chen gave a lecture at the most prestigious university on Sanctum. The auditorium was packed with alien students. One raised their hand. Ambassador Chen, when the council declared war, you smiled. Why, Sarah thought for a moment. Then she smiled again, but this time it was warm. Genuine. Because we had spent 200 years proving we could be peaceful, she said. We had worked so hard to control our nature, to be gentle, to be civilized in the way you understood. When you declared war, you gave us permission to stop pretending, to be what we really are, she paused. But here's what you didn't understand. Being civilized doesn't mean being weak. It means being strong enough to choose peace. We had the capacity for violence. We always did. We chose not to use it. You forced us to use it. And we showed you exactly how good we were at something we had been trying to forget. The smile was relief. Relief that we didn't have to hold back anymore. Relief that we could finally be ourselves, even if that self was terrifying. Another student spoke up. Do you regret it? The war? Every day, Sarah said honestly. 180,000 of our civilians died. Millions of soldiers on both sides. Civilizations damaged. Trust broken. War should always be regretted. But we didn't start it. We tried to be peaceful. You punished us for trying, so we showed you why we had been trying so hard. She looked around the room. The lesson isn't that humans are better warriors. The lesson is that peace only works when everyone chooses it. When one side decides to break peace, war comes. And in war, experience matters more than good intentions. We had 10,000 years of experience. You had 300 years of peace. That's why we won. As the lecture ended, an elderly Zeral approached her. He had been one of the ambassadors who voted for war. I wanted to apologize, he said quietly. I was wrong. About everything. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. The human gesture. The one that meant I hold no weapon. He took it carefully. We were both wrong, Sarah said. You for starting the war. Us for forgetting to explain why we were so peaceful.